Did you know that even the most famous melodies sometimes don't actually belong to their composers? For example, the famous Habanera from Carmen wasn't actually written by Bizet. I already told that story in another video on my channel, but today I have a new one about Pablo Sarasate and his Zigeunerweisen. I always wondered, where does the theme of the third section come from? And then one day, my grandma said, "Oh, I've heard that many times. It's a romance by Dvorjak." At first, I didn't believe her. But then I found an old Soviet record where the song was called "There is Only One Girl in the World." On the label, it actually said Hungarian folk song, arranged by Dvorjak. It was sung by the singer Lyubov Chernina. That was a real discovery for me. First of all, suddenly Dvorjak appeared next to Sarasate, his contemporary. And second, the same singer, Lyubov Chernina, also sang the songs I knew from the movie Cinderella with Faina Ranevskaya. Isn't that an unexpected connection? So here's a mystery. Who really wrote this melody? Sarasate or Dvorjak? Or did they both just use the same folk song? I couldn't find any romance by Dvorjak, and no mentions of it anywhere. It looks like the record company just made a mistake. But who knows? Maybe I just didn't look hard enough. If you know something about Dvorjak arrangements, please let me know in the comments. I'd really love to check it out.
In fact, the trail doesn't lead to Dvorjak at all, but to the Hungarian composer Elemér Szentirmay. In 1874, he wrote a romance on this melody and dedicated it to his wife Cezarina. At first it was called Elemér's Song, and a year later it entered his cycle Songs of Elemér as number 9.
If you play the theme the way Szentirmay wrote it, it sounds more like a German song than a gypsy tune. Hungarian musicologists say the same thing. See, there is no dotted rhythm here. That's what Sarasate added to make the melody sound fiery and gypsy-like. So in Sarasate's version, it sounds like this.
Sarasate probably heard this melody in Budapest in 1877, a year before he published his Zigeunerweisen. When Szentirmay found out the Spanish violinist had used his theme, he felt awkward. He didn't want to quarrel with a European celebrity. Sarasate excused himself. "I thought it was a folk song." Then his secretary, the pianist Otto Goldschmidt, wrote an apologetic letter to the Hungarian composer, full of compliments, explanations, and a request to allow the melody to be used in print. Szentirmay was flattered and proud. In 1884, the sheet music even carried the note, "Melody by Szentirmay," with the composer's kind permission. But soon it was removed, and his name disappeared again.
But still, there was a moment of recognition when Sarasate came to Budapest in 1888 and played Zigeunerweisen. The audience immediately recognized the romance. And in the concert program, it even said, "Theme by Szentirmay." And here's another mystery. In the only surviving recording of Zigeunerweisen played by Sarasate himself in 1904, the third section is missing.
As soon as the pianist starts the Szentirmay theme, Sarasate jumps straight to the finale. A coincidence? Unlikely. More likely, he just didn't want to recall that awkward story.
But then the melody began its own life. The Hungarian violinist János Hubay included it in his cycle, 6 Hungarian Poems, opus 27. Bartók published it in his collection, Hungarian folk songs. He was sure it was authentic folklore. And the Finnish composer Oskar Merikanto wrote a piano piece on it in 1897 called Mustalainen, which means gypsy girl. In Hungary, they even called it the only Hungarian serenade. Maybe that's why it crossed borders so easily, from a silent romance to gypsy orchestras, from the streets of Hungary all the way to Hollywood.
In 1929 to 1930, the melody even gave its name to the very first Hungarian sound film, One Little Girl in the World. And in 1946, it was heard in the Hollywood musical Holiday in Mexico. It was performed by Hungarian gypsy ensembles and violin virtuosos, such as Sándor, Dezső, Lakatos. Among singers, it was recorded by Sari Barabás and Haimási Ilona.
So, this melody has had an amazing journey. It started as a romance by Szentirmay, then became Sarasate's showpiece, a so-called folk song, and finally, part of world musical culture. And now my question to you. Do you think it's unfair to Szentirmay that his name was forgotten? Tell me in the comments. I'd really like to see your thoughts. And one more surprise! Even the brilliant finale of Zigeunerweisen wasn't completely Sarasate's own. He borrowed it from Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 13. And Liszt himself had heard the theme from gypsy musicians. So in Zigeunerweisen, Sarasate mixed in not only his own melodies, but don't you agree? He turned it all into a real celebration for the violin.